What's shaking, everybody? You're listening to Improv Tabletop, the Fate RPG actual play where we make up everything on the spot. I'm Ned Wilcock, your host and GM, and today I'm joined by...
Caleb Anderton, Jumanji Falls!
Heather, what am I doing here?
And Thomas, guitar riff.
Well, you're obviously here because you made a bad dice roll and you got trapped in the microphone, and now you can't get out until somebody saves you.
Boom.
But we're going to have to figure all that out at some point, somehow. We apparently have a lot of ideas percolating around in our brains for this campaign we got going on here.
The percolation is intense.
Yes. Just to be specifically clear about what we're doing, this is Jumanji mixed with Gravity Falls.
Yes!
And Caleb was about to start sharing his ideas off mic without all of you able to listen, so we're going to give him a chance to explain himself first.
What a Jumanji thing to do.
Guys, this could go in so many directions, and I don't even know where it's going to go, but I'm just going to jump into my ideation. When I was starting at I was about to turn 13 years old. It was like August. I turned 13 the next, September. I started doing a thing with my brother and my cousin where we would hop on a train in Olympia, Washington, and we'd ride it down for 2 hours to the Portland, Oregon train station where we would stay for a week. With my grandma and my grandpa and stay there at their house in Oregon. And we had all sorts of crazy adventures. But one of the things is that very first summer that we did that, we discovered the movie Jumanji, the original Robin Williams Jumanji. We found it. None of us had ever seen it. We put it in and we fell in love with it. We loved it. I mean, we watched it probably 3, 4, 5 times in that week-long stretch, and we'd always get Pioneer Pizza. You had to get the Pioneer Pizza, which was near my grandma's house, and watch it with Jumanji, or eat it while watching Jumanji. And that was a tradition. We did that so many times, summer after summer, and we always did that. We always watched Jumanji at least once, most of the time more. And I feel like already that's I was introduced to Jumanji in the setting of Gravity Falls.
Yeah, literally going to visit your elderly relatives in Oregon.
Yeah.
It's fated.
It is. I didn't discover Gravity Falls until much, much later. I think I discovered it during the pandemic, actually. I was I think I've heard of this show. I've never seen it. I should watch it. And you know what? It was during the pandemic. I had COVID. So I binged it in my isolation from the rest of my family. And by the time I got out, I was like, wife, kids, you got to watch this show. It's great. And we've watched it many, many times since. My kids are big fans. We're all big fans. So Gravity Falls, Jumanji, it's all very good stuff, near and dear to my little heart.
Indeed.
But that doesn't even cover. I don't even know where this is going to go. Are we going to be in Gravity Falls? Is this going to be a Gravity Falls version of the Jumanji game? Is this, I've never seen the video game versions. Is this video game version? I mean, board games and stuff coming alive and having consequences is a very Gravity Falls thing to do already. That's in there a ton.
Yeah, there is the Dungeons, and More Dungeons episode of Gravity Falls where a board game does come to life and they have to deal with that.
That's true.
There is. And then there's...
Where Weird Al voices the wizard, right?
Yes.
I think it's Weird Al.
Yes, yeah. Probabilitor the Annoying, voiced by Weird Al Yankovic.
So good.
Man, yeah, I guess I'll pop into mine so here's what I'm thinking. We'll get through the ideations, we'll figure out our characters.
Yeah.
Then based on that, I think we'll get a good idea of what sort of iteration of the two this is going to be. Listeners, we do ideations. We tell real stories about our real lives and our experiences with these different ideas. Probably should have explained that earlier. Anyway. So I watched Jumanji for the first time 2 days ago on New Year's Eve at the time of recording.
Oh my gosh.
Which one?
The original one.
Yes.
Robin Williams one?
Yes.
Good.
Have you seen the newer one?
I've seen neither of the newer ones.
Okay.
Me neither.
Okay.
Okay.
So here's my history with Jumanji. I remember watching the trailers for Jumanji when I was a young child and being absolutely terrified by what I was seeing.
Yes.
So I did not want to watch Jumanji. I've mentioned before on this podcast that I was a very, very easily frightened child. And so I'm watching these trailers and I'm seeing like this kid hiding in a car while elephants are stomping on top of it. And I'm like, ugh, I don't want to watch a child in mortal peril for an entire movie. No, thank you. I don't want to watch people get sucked into a crazy jungle game where they might get killed. No, thank you. And so for years and years and years, I have kind of avoided watching Jumanji because of this childhood fear. And I finally got around to watching it, and let me tell you, it's a good thing I didn't watch it when I was a kid because I would have been terrified. Oh boy.
Yes.
Like, by my modern adult sensibilities, like, it was fun. It's definitely a dark fantasy movie, but even in just like that first little bit where he gets sucked into the game and the bats start flying out.
Yes.
That, I would have been done. I would have been out of the room right then, right there. And so having watched it for the first time, I can definitely see like the appeal behind it. There is something very special, I think, about the fact that it's just set in the real world and all this crazy stuff is happening in the real world to these characters that brings a certain degree of sort of magical realism to it that I think is very grounding and that I think says a lot for why it has stuck around so much. Plus, just the amazing performances. Robin Williams, Kirsten Dunst, even though she is a very, very young child, she's already phenomenal with like this great British accent that she pulls out and everything. Wonderfully performed. The CG holds up surprisingly well for a movie that came out in 1995.
My gosh, it was 95?
Yeah, 1995 is when that movie came out.
Holy crap.
But the thing that it did remind me of is a movie that I did watch when it came out, which is called Zathura.
Yes.
Written by the same author. They're both books.
Oh, books that then eventually became films, okay.
Yeah, they're both like children's picture books. They're not like chapter books or anything like that, but beautiful illustrations. There's Jumanji, like the jungle one, and then there's Zathura, which is the space one. And yeah, very similar vibes.
Yeah, I watched that one a couple different times. I remember watching it in my band class on like some sort of holiday half day.
Oh.
We were going to be let out early in the day anyway, so my band teacher was like, here, just have fun watching this movie. I remember not being afraid of that one. I think maybe it's because it's a little bit less grounded in reality. Like, the house is floating through space, and yes, all this crazy stuff is happening, but it feels a bit more fantastical. It feels a bit less like the kind of thing that could actually happen to me, a real life, like, 3 or 4 year old. I also remember watching some of the behind the scenes for it. That was kind of like my first introduction to the idea of practical effects versus computer generated effects, because they showed that they started with this beautiful house set that they had built, and then they're actually like blowing it up and tearing it apart while the stuff is happening in the movie. And so they're like, well, we've only got one go at this take. Hopefully it looks good. And my mind just kind of being like, oh, that's why it looks so cool, because it's actually happening.
So cool.
Yeah, I haven't seen either of the newer Jumanji films. I've heard that they're pretty good. The one that I am closer to is Gravity Falls, definitely between the two, which I also discovered at the tail end, quote unquote, of the pandemic. It was still kind of in the middle of the pandemic. I equate like the worst part of the pandemic with a specific apartment that I was living in, and I moved out of that apartment into a new one, a much better apartment. And around that time, I was consuming a lot of Monster of the Week-ish style stuff. So I was watching Gravity Falls for the first time. I was listening to the Adventure Zone's Amnesty campaign that they ran using the Monster of the Week RPG. And I was listening to Aesop Rock's album Spirit World Field Guide over and over and over again. And so I was getting all of these very kind of spooky Monster of the Week-y sort of things all at once. And that was largely what prompted us to record the Tension Builders initially.
Yes.
So we've kind of trod this ground a little bit, and there were even some Gravity Falls sort of influences in the Tension Builders. But I think Gravity Falls is special and specific enough that I want to give it its own airing on the show. But I had heard about it for years prior to that point. Lots of our friends in Comic Frenzy who were obsessed with it. I remember Christian dressing up as Dipper one year for Halloween. He had like the hat and the shirt and the vest and everything. And I finally got around to seeing what the big deal was. And it's lovely. There's so much heart in it. And there's so much that it doesn't really shy away from, even though it's a kid's show. One thing that I really appreciate about storytellers is when they recognize that their audience is smart and they don't have to whack them over the head with stuff, and that they can handle a lot of complex and kind of convoluted and interesting things. And there's a lot of convoluted and interesting things that happen in Gravity Falls, and they let you come along the ride with it, and it feels good to be able to feel like you're solving the mystery alongside the characters in the show. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that we would read about in Truth and Comedy, our improv textbook, and that our professor would always talk to us about, is this idea of treat the audience like they're smart. If you make a couple logical leaps in your mind, if you make the right one, then the audience is going to figure out the leap that you made, and they'll feel like they're in on the joke. They'll feel like they're along on the journey with you. Mm-hmm. And Gravity Falls definitely does that in a very adept way, I think. And of course, it's wonderfully animated, wonderfully performed, wonderfully written. It's one that I am definitely going to go back and start rewatching again. I watched a couple episodes leading up to this just to kind of wet my palate. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's the good stuff. That's the real good stuff.
Which episodes, out of curiosity?
I did watch the Dungeons, and More Dungeons episode.
Yes.
The controversial 1979 version, edition, or whatever.
Yeah.
The 90s were a dark time. We don't do that version.
Right, exactly. Then went back, just kind of started at the beginning and started watching through. And it's so good. And we've already announced that we're bringing the Tension Builders back as our next long-form campaign. So yeah. I definitely need to just kind of re-immerse myself in that genre. I'm so excited. It's going to be great. But yeah, that's my ideation here, my connection with these two things. Let's go over to Heather now.
Okay, so I may have learned about Gravity Falls just a tad bit later than either of you. I learned about it on December 19th, 2024, 1:30 p.m., and this is how I learned about it. Speaking of fate, the next campaign is Jumanji mixed with Gravity Falls. Are you a fan of either of those? And 8 hours later, I said, I have no idea what Gravity Falls is, but I love Jumanji. So that's where I heard of it, which is ample time to learn about it. And I didn't. So,
I knew it.
Oh, what a left turn.
Any of you who knows me knows that I'm really, really great at watching animated things if Thomas isn't the force behind it, or my children. So it will never happen.
Unless we can convince your kids that they need to watch Gravity Falls.
Ooh.
Unless you can convince them and then convince their parents to let them watch it.
They can handle it. If my kids can handle it, your kids can handle it. My kids are scaredy cats.
Well, this is the rule we have, is they can't watch a show unless mom or dad have watched the show. So that's just a whole wormhole there. But I like where you're thinking.
Well, Thomas, have you watched it? I could have sworn that you'd seen Gravity Falls.
I've absolutely seen every episode of Gravity Falls.
Good.
But
Okay, well,
I don't want to
perfect.
interrupt your ideation there.
Well, no, see, I'm just going to add one more interjection real quick. All you need to do is tell your kids, hey, this is one of Ned's favorite TV shows. And they'll be like, oh, okay.
Our oldest would absolutely be all over that for sure.
Ned gave him a stuffy that was his when he was younger, and our oldest still sleeps with it all the time. And
This day.
when we visit Ned, he makes sure he has that bat with him.
Oh my goodness.
But the homework that I did do of Gravity Falls was when we were talking about it, and I looked up this picture right here. It's just the cover of like Gravity Falls.
Yeah.
That says Disney Gravity Falls. I didn't know it was Disney.
Surprise.
Surprisingly.
Alex Hirsch.
Oh, what a guy.
So good.
But looking at it, I was just like, I feel like they talk like, hey, what's that over there? Like, really annoying, like, which is a rude guess on my part.
I mean, it's not inaccurate.
Yeah, I'll say I wasn't expecting Mabel to be voiced by Kristen Schaal. I mean, she's a great performer.
Seriously,
She's
right?
so good.
But she does have a very distinct voice.
Oh, yeah, she does.
Well, I will go to Jumanji, which I love.
Yes.
I would say that I am very influenced by media and things give me nightmares. Like, even as an adult, I cannot watch certain films. Like I asked Thomas, will it give me nightmares? Because my nightmares are very vivid. Like, they take over my daytime, even when I'm awake. Like, I get horrible nightmares. And Jumanji didn't do that for me. I grew up on Jumanji, and I loved Jumanji. And Robin Williams, his character, Alan, was like my best friend, especially when he came back at just Jungle Man. I don't know why I felt I related to him, but I did.
Yes.
I don't know. I felt I lived in a jungle my whole life.
Because you were a wild child.
I actually grew up telling people I was raised in the jungle by hippos. That's not related to Jumanji.
How is that not related to Jumanji?
That's very related to Jumanji.
But maybe that's why I feel like I have a kinship with the Jungle Man. But I am still very terrified of Ouija boards and anything like that. And we actually own the Jumanji game, and I have never opened it because I still have a real fear of that, but I love that we have it.
We got it for the boys for Christmas.
You did?
Yeah, just like this year.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's so fun.
Dude, I remember, I feel like even more so than being terrified by the trailer for the movie itself, seeing the commercial for the board game, that was what really terrified me.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, I don't think I would be playing that board game either.
Right. Seriously. And I don't know. I love Jumanji. I love the story of it. I love the arc. I feel like it just opened up my imagination to what a story could be, because then when you get back to the present moment at the end, like the beginning moment, you're like, oh, it's like a flash of what your life could be. Like, I don't know. I loved it. And I love Bonnie Hunt. That was the first time I knew Bonnie Hunt. I met her. I love her and everything. I'm always like, it's her. And Thomas is like, I don't know who that is. She's in Red 1, by the way. And I was like, it's her. And he's like, who? I love Bonnie Hunt. If you're listening, which you never will, I love her.
She's also in like all the Pixar movies.
Oh, yeah.
She is a Sally, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know that the hunter, until Thomas told me a week ago, I didn't know the hunter was his dad.
Van Pelt.
And I've watched that film 1,000 times.
Yeah, I didn't recognize that until I went to IMDb after I finished the movie.
Yeah, they did a really good job.
You got to go back and just view those scenes with that in mind, because he's a fantastic actor.
It's a very like Peter Pan, Captain Hook, like
Yes.
storyline right there, right?
Yeah.
The last thing I will say about Jumanji is I was so mad when they remade it, because I don't like when they remake films that are already fantastic.
Yep.
But I was pleasantly surprised, and we've watched it several times. The first one, not the second of the new remakes.
Several times.
And I love it. Jack Black. Oh, I just love it so much. But the thing is, one of the times I have watched that movie, and I think this is pivotal, I don't know if this goes in with Gravity Falls, but the very end, when they meet the guy that they had saved, sorry, this is spoilers, but when they meet him, they're like talking, and he's like, I have children, and I named my daughter Bethany. And it's like, I've watched that an hour. I rewind it and watch it, rewind it and watch it. I just think that's one of the most beautiful moments. That's all.
Right on. And then I believe, Thomas, you're the only one left. What you got for us?
Did anybody ever watch Jumanji, the TV show?
No.
The TV show, you say?
There's an animated TV show I got to watch half the episodes for growing up, and
No way.
it was not as engaging as some of the other TV shows of the time, but it was just like, how do we commercialize every single major property that's in the theaters? And came out in 95, and regardless. But yeah, there was an animated TV show about Jumanji. But yeah, the most terrifying thing about Jumanji for me was the plants by far. I was terrified that the purple plants would just eat me and like shoot stuff at me. I was terrified of it. I should not have been watching Jumanji when I was 5 years old, but I was 6 out of 7 kids, and as I get older, I realize it's really hard to stop your younger kids from watching movies you swore you'd never show your younger kids because you have older kids now, and you're like, I can't just isolate the younger kids in another room while the older kids are watching. Oh gosh, okay, they're exposed to it.
That's literally what happened when we showed the boys Jumanji a few months ago. We had our 4-year-old in the room, 4-year-old boy, and he probably wasn't ready for it, but we're all there watching it as a family, so we kind of walked him through it. We talked him through it. It was okay.
Yeah, so I watched that. I was terrified by the plants. That's the only thing I really was terrified of. Not even like the almost headshot kills that were happening from the sniper rifle. But the thing I really want to talk about is, just everything, but Gravity Falls. I saw Gravity Falls. My first episode I saw was the finale.
Oh no!
Of Gravity Falls. I just turned on. Our oldest had just been born, and we were at my mother-in-law's house, and I was up until 3 a.m. because just holding the baby.
Colic.
And so I was like, all right, what's on? And I was like, hey, this seems interesting. And so I saw the first of the Weird Mageddon episodes, and I was like, this is really weird. And I looked at the title and was like, well, Weird Mageddon, yeah, that kind of tracks. Didn't understand anything, and I was like, I'm intrigued. And then I came back 2 years later and finally watched it. And so I was like, that was pretty darn good. And the Gravity Falls humor is just what I relate with so terribly much. It's just so stinking good. What was the actress's name again that plays Mabel? Kristen Shaw. She is by far the most perfect casting for Mabel, this
so good.
13-year-old or coming on 13-year-old twin. One of my favorite lines that she says is like in the very first episode. She's got this this sweater that hangs over her hands, and she goes, of course people like me, I'm irresistible. And just like is the goofiest line ever. And her sweaters that just light up, that have electricity like woven into them, just absolutely hilarious. Every time I need to pick me up, I go and rewatch some of those episodes. And yes, even the Dungeons and Dungeons and More Dungeons episode, of course, the now traditional homage to D&D, which they have in a lot of animated shows, is genius.
Have you seen the Gravity Falls shorts that they have on Disney Plus?
I have, yeah.
They're so fun.
They're pretty darn good.
Sometimes if we've got a few minutes before bedtime and, there's not enough time for like a full episode, kids will be like, can we watch a Gravity Falls short? And so we turn one on, and one ends up being like 4, which is like the length of a normal episode, so I don't know why we bother, but
there we go.
They're so fun. They're all so great.
But yeah, it's just a good time. It's really fun. Heather would not enjoy Gravity Falls, as she has explained, has a very vivid imagination. So especially the Weird Mageddon episodes, I'm like, yeah, this doesn't need to grace Heather at all.
They get pretty freaky.
They get pretty weird and pretty vivid.
Yeah, dude, I'm thinking back to like my vivid imagination as a child. I'm trying to remember if I've told this story on the podcast before, but probably my biggest encounter with being really, really afraid of something when I was a child was my family watched Ernest Scared Stupid.
Yes, I remember that one.
That movie scared the stupid out of me. I was a child. Holy cow.
I love Ernest.
That was pretty, yeah.
And I've since gone back, I read an article that somebody wrote about how it's actually a genuinely terrifying film and why are we letting our kids watch this? Mm-hmm. Because, you've got the troll who can mimic the voice of your parents and it can show up anywhere.
Yep.
And it's it just gives you this sense of as long as this troll exists, you are not safe no matter what you think. But, I legitimately, my parents started sending me to therapy because of that movie. They did not know what to do with me.
And the hero is Ernest.
Yeah, Ernest P. Worrell.
This goofy comedy with a bottle of Miak.
My brain thought you said Pee Wee Herman, and I was like, no, it's not.
Definitely not Pee Wee Herman.
Okay.
But dang, all this reminiscing about Gravity Falls has me realizing it's we need to give a shout out to Alex Hirsch.
Yes.
A special specific shout out. I feel like everything that man touches is gold.
Yeah, it's pretty darn good. So good.
Because he's also a big creative contributor in The Owl House, which is another show that I really enjoy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And all the stuff that he was doing on a meta level with Gravity Falls, it makes me wish that I had been experiencing it while it was coming out, because he was putting secret coded messages in the credits of each episode, and people are writing down these symbols and trying to figure out what the cipher is. There's this message that's being told throughout the entire series, and there's just so many other cool, the way that he involved people in the creation and the production of that show while it was being created is amazing, and I love it.
There's a statue of Bill Cipher hidden somewhere in the Oregon forests. Someday I want to go find it.
Someday. Oh man, well, that was a good ideation. Now we get to figure out who our characters are going to be. Now that we've got all these ideas floating around in our heads.
Oh man.
So, does anybody have an idea of what kind of character they want to play in this campaign?
I have an idea. So my character is a late to puberty, late teenager. He is 19 years old and still hasn't hit puberty yet, or he actually just started hitting puberty.
Oh boy.
19.
His legs are longer than his torso. But because he still lives with his parents, his mom already bought him his annual pair of Levi's, so they're too short. And so he's got high waters, Mm-hmm. And no, I'm not pulling from personal experience in this character creation here. So
absolutely not.
But he does have the one thing that he's been able to hold on to, which who would have guessed it, is a distinctive trucker hat that he wears everywhere. And this is the year that things are going to change for him, right? He's going to make sure that this year is going to be the year that he's noticed. He's finally hit puberty. He's been waiting his whole teenage life, even delaying graduating high school. He's like, I can't do this until I have hit my prime, which is puberty, and here he is.
So he's starting his senior year as a 19-year-old for the third time?
He's finished high school, but he just refuses to graduate until...
Okay.
So he's a very studious individual, and he's like very much like, I've done everything, checked it off. It's just he can't graduate until the last box is checked off, which is hit puberty. And so now that he's like, he checked it off, and now he gets his binder of other checklists that he's been saving up and writing over these past like 5 years to be like, all right, the first one is turning 18. Here's my checklist, which has been crossed out, and the number 18 has been crossed out for 19. And then, it's circled there, which is a ... because he's almost 20 actually. And so he's like, I almost had to cross out 19. His name is Ripper. And
of course.
Jack the?
Just Ripper.
Just Ripper.
Ripper Cedars or something like that?
Yeah, Ripper Cedar.
Ripper
there
Cedar.
We go. Ripper Cedar.
I love the contrast between this high water wearing dorky noodle kid named Ripper.
Ripper Cedar. Now, he's not like comically, like his legs aren't comically larger than his torso. He's not a cartoon. I will specify that. He has like some actual proportion there, but his legs are maybe it's just his high waters that have this forced perspective of him like being taller than his legs longer than he actually is, So Ripper Cedar, that's my guy. That's me.
All right. Now, how do we think we would distill Ripper Cedar into a nice high concept aspect?
Anxiously ready?
Anxiously ready.
Maybe?
Because he's got all of these checklists that he's been holding on to for such a long time. It's finally time to get all of the stuff that he's been waiting for out into the world.
Yeah, he's anxiously ready.
All right.
Maybe anxiously ready, incredibly inept.
Anxiously ready, incredibly inept.
I'll add that at the end there.
All right. Now, aside from being incredibly inept, what's something that gets Ripper in trouble on occasion?
His puberty cracking voice.
Yes, nobody can take him seriously.
Or gives away his location.
Just cracks at random times.
Yep.
Like even when he's not talking, it just
yeah. He'll just breathe.
I love that.
I was breathing through my nose.
Okay, so we've got our sense, a little bit of an idea of who Ripper Cedar is. Let's go into our audience suggested aspects. And here are the ones that we're going to choose for Ripper Cedar. Only a game made by nerds would have charisma as a fantasy power. Monkeys stole my car. And let me put on my skepticals.
Those are all fantastic.
All so good.
I know the first one is from Dungeons and Dungeons and More Dungeons, but
yes,
don't think I'm going to call that one out.
Which I don't know if we outright said. We've mentioned this episode a few times to our listeners, but just so that you know for sure what we're referring to, a board game comes to life and they have to defeat the board game in real life, basically.
Yes.
In Gravity Falls.
Per Gravity Falls fashion.
Yes.
All this weird stuff coming to life.
That happens in Jumanji too, but,
It does.
Really?
I think I'm going to go with I'm pulling out my skepticals.
All right. Yeah, this is a kid who maybe has been bullied a few too many times. Maybe his gullibility has been played on by some of the other kids throughout the years.
Fair.
That makes sense. And now we'll get a stunt or a cool piece of equipment. What is something cool that Ripper can do that nobody else can do?
He has unnatural puberty strength. And so he will accidentally rip. Like his muscles just like flare. And that's like his stunt.
Oh, so that's why they call him Ripper.
His name he was given at birth is finally coming to pass.
With his pubescent rage.
Yeah, and it is like quick body transformation. Sometimes it comes with a crack, sometimes it doesn't. So it just rips. And he's just
Perfect. All right. Now, as a reminder for our players and our audience, we have 6 different approaches. One of them is going to be at +3, 2 of them are going to be at +2, 2 of them are going to be at +1, and one of them is going to be at +0. And Thomas, would you let us know for our audience just what your peak approach, your +3 approach is going to be?
I'm going to say forceful. He's been waiting his whole life. He's going to be forceful in the things that he moves forward with.
Yes, he's going to be assertive about making sure that people look at him, acknowledge him as an actual member of society, and also when he is in his pubescent rage, he can pull your head off.
It's like a Wookiee.
Yeah.
Ripper, Cedar.
Ripper Cedar, coming to a theater near you this Wednesday.
Don't forget it.
All right. Now that we've got Ripper Cedar figured out, Caleb or Heather, do either of you have a character in mind?
Heather, you got one, I can tell.
I do, but if you you can go first and I can keep pondering.
No, I was going to tell you to do the same thing. You go first.
Okay.
I'm going to keep pondering.
Thanks, you're so nice.
You're welcome.
Okay. When you see this character, she is surprisingly a female.
Heather actually playing a female this time.
Wow.
Yeah, surprising for Heather.
Surprise! Who's a human?
An actual human female. Wow.
Right? We're going all sorts of weird here. So when you see her, she's got fiery red frizzy hair, not curly, just like Hagrid hair almost, right? But just red.
Okay.
Like plasma ball hair.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's always leaves and sticks in it and stuff. And she's, I wouldn't say gangly, but she is kind of odd to look at. Like she's ragged and scrappy looking. She's got tears in her clothes and stuff. And she is an orphan. However, she lives in her parents' backyard.
Yes.
And it's one of those big wildish backyards that if you have a good enough imagination, you don't realize there's actually a fence around it. You think it's wild. And she has been raised by the wildlife there. And every now and then these people that just live on the property, aka her parents,
quote unquote,
make her come in every now and then. But she is an orphan. She just needs everyone to know the dangers in the world, why people are not to be trusted, but you can always trust the wild badgers or the turtles and stuff. But she never really went to formal education, so they may not actually be what you would call them. So a badger may be more like a bunny rabbit, right? But she thinks that's a badger.
Yeah.
So she was raised by wild flying badgers.
Flying?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. We would call them flying squirrels. But that is her sad, tragic tale. And she is oh so serious.
So sad, so tragic.
Yeah. And she is probably 4'11". Maybe 4'12", which some people might say 5 foot. But she don't know that.
She don't know that.
So she's probably about 4'12".
4'12", okay. Now, what do you have a name in mind for our 4'12" tall wild orphan?
Maud. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
M-A-U-D, no E.
Now, what do you think would be a nice, concise, high-concept aspect for our friend Maud here?
The tough questions.
Definitely raised by badgers.
Yeah.
Definitely raised by badgers.
Why not?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Definitely raised by badgers.
Definitely, absolutely raised by badgers. No question about it.
Though that whole sentence. Absolutely raised by badgers. Period. No question about
That's
it.
exactly what it is.
All right.
No question about it.
Now, what do you think is something that might get Maud in trouble on occasion?
Probably the fact that her reality is not the same as others, that she calls things different things than other people do. She has a different dictionary.
A different dictionary. Very nice.
I like that.
Okay, now let's take a look at some audience-suggested aspects for Maud. You get to choose from, in the jungle you must wait until the dice read 5 or 8. I didn't cheat, I just tried to drop the dice so they landed on 12. Or 100 gnomes in a trench coat.
Man, why would you give that third one to me?
Because we know
Oh.
Heather. For anybody not in ICF or not listening to ICF, Heather actually came up with the first name for I Cast Fireball, which was...
Well, someone else came up with it, but I was insistent that that was the name.
3 kobolds in a trench coat or 3 goblins in a trench coat, something like that.
It was one of those.
It was one of those two.
It was goblins, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was I Cast Fireball.
Oh my god. So rude.
What a terrible podcast name. Who would listen to that?
So rude.
I have since said that it was a good idea.
Dropping the dice seems pretty accurate to me.
I think I agree with you, Caleb. I think the most fitting, although it's the one I want to do, the goblins one, but I think it is the most fitting.
All right.
I didn't cheat. I just tried to drop the dice so they land on 12.
All right. Now we've got a stunt or piece of equipment for Maud. What you got?
Ooh, she's got the sharpest stick.
The sharpest stick.
Amazing.
That's brilliant.
Perfect. Love it. There's so many good things you can do with the stick, especially if it's the sharpest stick.
Yeah, the sharpest one there ever was.
Sharpest stick.
Very nice. Now, of the 6 approaches, which one do you think is going to be Maud's peak approach?
Well, I was thinking forceful until Thomas said his was forceful. I always seem to copy him.
You can both be forceful.
Actually, what if I'm going to change mine to quick instead of forceful? Because I realize that he wants to be quick about finishing his checklists. So my peak approach is quick, not forceful.
So, Maud, you want to go for quick?
Yeah, I'm quick, actually, so Thomas, change it back.
Oh my gosh.
My peak approach is forceful.
Booyah.
And then I get a 2-2-1-0.
2 2s, 2 1s, and a 0. So you can go ahead and fill those out at your leisure.
Well, it's forceful is my peak, and this is probably no surprise, but my 0 is clever.
Nice.
The sharpest stick.
All right. Now, Caleb, have you had enough time to ponder and scheme?
I think I have.
Ruminate.
There's just one final detail that I'm trying to work out in my brain as far as which would go better. Heather, does Maud have a last name?
Orphan.
Orphan. Okay, I am going to be Maud's father.
Hey.
This is the second time.
I love when you're my parent.
This is the second time Caleb has been Heather's parent.
It's true.
Someone's got to put a lid on me. Like, it's
It's
just...
true. He's not. Okay, so Maud's father, Maud's actual last name is Smith. And Maud's father is just a wealthy individual. He doesn't exactly have a job. He just lives off of inherited wealth and spends a lot of time out on safari with a very big gun.
The biggest of guns.
The biggest of guns. So he's going to be Safari Smith.
I love that.
Now, is that his legal given name, Safari Smith, or is that an affectation?
Nobody knows his first name. He just doesn't go by it. So, Mr. Smith.
It's provocative.
Yeah.
It gets the people going.
So yeah, let's see, good high concept aspect for him. So yeah, he realizes he has a feral daughter living out in his backyard, but really, I mean, we don't try to make contact too much because it would soil the family name. So she's just out there. We realize it's okay. We drop off Lunchables every week. She's fine. So, like I said, he's very often gone. He'll call home, make sure his wife drops off the Lunchables for their daughter. He's not too present, but he is here. This is one of the times he's here. He's back from his big game hunt in Africa. And let's see, high concept aspect for this guy. He is... Any help, guys? Anything come to your mind?
High concept. Yes.
The best father in the city. The idle rich.
The idle rich.
Yeah.
Researcher of the wild.
Ooh, I kind of like that.
I'm thinking of something with alliteration is kind of what I was thinking. Like
yeah.
basing off of like wealth, rich, inheritance, safari, old English, because that's what the pompous old English would do. Yes. They would go safari. They would go to game.
Pompous papa.
Pompous papa.
The Lord of the Wild.
Ooh, I like Lord of the Wild. That's pretty fun. We'll do that. We'll do Father of the Wild. Because
There we go.
You might be the wild, too, maybe.
A poacher, father of the wild.
I could be on your safari.
You could.
Yes.
You could be hunting Maud.
Maybe something has happened. Maybe that's why I've finally taken an interest in Maud and decided to stay home, is because I have the most interesting big game right here in front of me.
The most dangerous game.
Most dangerous game.
Human is the best dangerous game in the world.
Knife Monopoly.
So, what is something that gets Safari Smith in trouble aside from the fact that maybe he wants to hunt his daughter?
I won't make you stick to that.
Oh, I forgot to mention, remember that little detail I was trying to figure out? He is Maud's father. He is also Ripper's uncle.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a thing. I want them to be cousins. They may not know each other. I don't care if you guys know each other or not, but I've got a relationship with both of you guys.
Seems like there's some messed up genes in that father's family.
Yeah.
But did Ripper's father just not get the inheritance? It all went to Safari.
Oldest brother, all the money.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, and then Ripper's father had to change his last name from Smith to Cedar because that was written into the will.
Yes. Yeah. Completely disowned.
Oh.
Forgot they would have the last name, probably. Maybe I'm the sister's brother. I don't know.
Don't want to sully the family name.
All right. I love it. I still need a trouble.
A trouble. I mean, it sounds like maybe there's some skeletons in the family closet here.
Sounds like family trouble to me.
I like it. Skeletons in the closet.
Yes, trophies in the boardroom, skeletons in the closet.
Ooh, yes.
Now, let's take a look at some audience-suggested aspects for this character.
Oh gosh.
I'm playing the controversial 90s edition. Doubles gets another turn.
Ooh.
Or, get him, get him.
I forgot about that. It's my favorite guy.
Oh, so good. Gosh.
Oh, so funny.
Okay. Doubles gets another turn. Get him. The controversial 90s edition.
Our patrons gave us some very good choices.
Did.
Seriously.
I'm going to do Doubles gets another turn. He's greedy, obviously. Takes all the family inheritance, disowns his brother.
Yes.
Makes him change his name.
I get another turn.
He's a very opportunistic sort.
Yes.
Okay, and now we need a stunt for Safari Smith.
I mean, he's got a big gun. It's a pretty good piece of equipment.
Just a big gun.
The biggest of guns.
The biggest.
biggest of
I'm going to call it a blunderbuss.
Oh.
We got Maud has the sharpest stick, and Safari Smith has the biggest blunderbuss.
Perfect.
And I rip stuff.
Yeah.
It's a very forceful group.
Yeah, speaking of forceful, what do you think is Safari Smith's peak approach?
Careful, clever, flashy, forceful, quick, sneaky. I'm going to put that he's clever.
Mm-hmm.
He's conniving. He's manipulative.
You don't say.
Yeah, however, he didn't get the police to find out he has a feral daughter in the back or anyone in the neighborhood. I mean, he's smart.
Yes. Lots of things to hide.
There are things that we keep under wraps here in the Smith household.
When there's no cops around, anything's legal.
Just slips them a gold bar every time they come to the house.
Gold bar.
Okay, well, looks like we've got 3 characters all ready to go. And now that we've had this big, long ideation, I think we're going to begin our story in the next episode.
Oh, man, I'm so ready.
So many of these Gravity Fall things are coming to my mind right now. Like, I forgot about the sheriff and the deputy, and I forgot about the get 'em guy and the jacked lumberjack.
Manly Dan.
Yeah, Manly Dan.
I'm trying to remember the Gatum guy. His name's Tyler Cutebiker, isn't it?
Yes.
Because he's in Dixie shorts, isn't he? And like
Yep.
boots.
Yeah, like the Daisy Duke shorts. Listeners, if that isn't enough to get you to watch this show, I don't know what is. Well, everybody, thanks for listening to Improv Tabletop. We'll be back next week with more adventures in the world of Jumanji Falls. If you want more, go ahead and subscribe, maybe even give us a review. We would be as happy as a ridiculously wealthy man who got all the inheritance if you'd go ahead and give us a review on the podcatcher of your choice. We're also all over social media at Improv Tabletop, so if you'd like to connect with us there, realistically we only use Instagram, but if you'd like to connect with us there, don't be afraid to reach out. Now it's time to shout out our next batch of Sticker Club patrons.
Woo.
And this week, the folks we're shouting out are Tetra Slash, Tim Rust, and Tyson Lanzin.
Yeah!
We see you!
These three are the officials who keep trying to reveal the fact that Safari Smith has a feral daughter, but just, they keep getting so rich. They keep getting so rich. They figure they might as well milk this for a little bit longer, right?
They keep getting reelected, and their houses get a little bigger every year.
Yep, it's not corruption. You're just watching out for number one, We will have more Sticker Club patrons to shout out next week, and if you, dear listener, want to join their ranks, consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Improv Tabletop, where you can also get things like Discord access, biannual sticker packs, and more, such as our current ongoing patron-exclusive campaign, Miceborn, the Mouse Ritter Chronicles.
Yeah.
We are very happy to have Thomas on full-time for the remainder of that campaign.
Yay!
As we move into the finale, the final arc of this campaign. We've visited all the places we need to visit. There's just a couple minor things that we need to sort out, like the fact that other Thomas's character's mother staged a coup, and now we have to get that. So it's just, minor stuff.
Yeah.
If you want to know what all of this means, then you can go hear that over on our Patreon. It's a wonderful time. Go check it out. Now, let's do a round of plugs, and I'll take that this time around. Now, we have a sister podcast with a terrible name. It's called iCast Fireball. I don't know why you would go listen to this podcast with a terrible name like that. Thomas, you're muted. But, even though it's got a terrible name, it's got good stories, and it's got a good editor and a good cool DM who does cool DM things. So if you're interested in hearing about that, don't be afraid to go check it out. Why did I say don't be afraid? Just go check it out. It's a fun time. It's a fun, grand, wonderful time. Let's see some other things. We have our affiliation with fanrolldice.com. If you want to get some really cool dice, you can head over there. And if you use the coupon code VROOMVROOMFIFI at checkout, you can get 10% off your purchase. And a little bit of that goes back to us as a nice little kickback, which is lovely. And we always enjoy seeing that people are furthering their dice goblin habits in the name of Improv Tabletop. And let's see, another thing that I would like to plug is a very... It's a video game. It's called Thank Goodness You're Here. It's the most British thing I have ever experienced in my life. It is a slap former is what they call it, because you have 3 methods of control. You walk around, you jump, and you slap things. That's how you interact with the world around you. You're this weird little yellow guy who's been sent to a very British town to help people out with stuff. And you help people out with stuff by slapping things all around town, and who knows what's going to happen when you slap the right thing. It's very slapstick. It's very, very well written. Very fun game. Definitely recommend you go check it out. It's called Thank Goodness You're Here, and you will hear that said many, many times while you're playing that game.
Sounds lovely.
So much fun. That is definitely one of my top games of 2024. Big recommend. Well, thanks everybody for joining us here in the world of Jumanji Falls. I'm Ned Wilcock, your host and GM, and I've been joined by...
Caleb Anderton, insanely rich.
Heather, finally living the orphan dream.
And Thomas, ready to rip.
Much love and stuff, everybody. We'll catch you next time on Improv Tabletop.
Heather, finally living the orphan dream.
And Thomas disappeared. I don't know where he is.
But he did record his outro already.
Oh, so that's what he was doing when I called him out on not having his microphone on.
Yes.
Okay. Look at that man thinking ahead.